Hello, and in this video we are going to see what are the three structures of CTC that are used in today's industry. So starting with fixed CTC structure. What is a fixed CTC structure? Fixed CTC structure is one in which the components are defined by the employer, such as in this example you could see the salary components are basic, conveyance, HRA, telephone reimbursement, leave travel allowance, that is LTA, meal voucher and special allowance. These are the components which are decided by the employer of the company, and the structure is also decided by the employer. So what is the structure of the CTC here? It is either a certain percentage or a formula of calculation or a certain amount which is fixed. So based on that, the structure is finalized. For example, the employer has defined basic salary as 50% of CTC and conveyance as 1,600 rupees as a fixed amount, HRA as 40% of basic and DA, telephone reimbursement as rupees 2,000 per month, leave travel allowance as 10% of basic, meal voucher as rupees 2,200 per month, and special allowance is defined as the balance or the remaining amount that is left out. So let us see in practicality how this CTC structure works in Excel. In this Excel, we have a CTC of rupees 70,000 per month. So when we convert that into annual figure, that comes to about 8,40,000. So let us prepare this CTC structure using the fixed CTC method and using this structure as an example which is defined by a company. Please remember that every company will decide its own structure and the components, and some of the components and the structure will be based on the statutory compliances and labor laws. So starting with basic salary, which is 50% of CTC. How do we calculate this? Let us do it practically and understand here. We'll put the formula as is equal to 70,000 into 50%. Conveyance, the amount is fixed as 1,600. For HRA, it is 40% of basic and DA. So we will select the basic cell, which is E4 into 40%. 2,000, there is a fixed amount of telephone reimbursement. Coming to the LTA, it is 10% on basic. So we will select the basic cell here and multiply by 10%. Meal voucher, it's a fixed amount of rupees 2,200 per month. Talking about the special allowance, which is a taxable component, it will be CTC, which is 70,000 minus sum of all the other components which we have calculated so far. That is, from basic till meal voucher, whatever we have calculated, we will add that and minus it from 70,000. So 70,000 minus all the components, what is left out? That is 11,700 rupees. This balance amount, which is not allocated into any other components, will be called as special allowance, and it's a completely taxable head. So when we do not have any heads where we can add the components, where we can save the tax, that kind of amount we always add into special allowance. Now let us total up all the components and check. It should be 70,000, which is your CTC. So when you total all the components, it should come up to 70,000 or whatever the amount of the CTC given to the employee. So just by multiplying by 12, you will get the annual amount. So the monthly amount into 12. So these are the annual figures and these are the monthly figures of the CTC structure. So this is an example of how you can prepare a simple CTC structure for rupees 70,000 using fixed CTC structure of a sample company. I hope this was useful for you. Now we will discuss what is a flexible CTC structure. So as you understood, fixed CTC structure is one in which the employer has already fixed the components of the salary structure and also given a certain range or a percentage or an amount to each component, which is well defined by the employer. So let us talk about the flexible CTC structure or flexible benefit plan, FBP in other words. You can see a sample structure here of flexible benefit plan, wherein as you can see only the basic salary is fixed by the employer, which is 50% of CTC in this example, which this basic can range from 35% to 50 or 55% of the CTC depending on the employer. But if you go as per the new wage code 2019 in India, then it would be based on minimum 50% of CTC. So talking about the other components, there are various allowances and reimbursements available for the employee, and using these the employee can save the tax. So that is the main advantage or use of having flexible benefit plan. So let us see what are the components that are there in flexible benefit plan. So starting with conveyance allowance, HRE, telephone reimbursement, leave travel allowance, meal voucher, car reimbursement for a small car and car reimbursement for a big car, driver salary reimbursement and special allowance. Special allowance is given as a standard wherein the balance amount is always added here. That is the usual practice in most of the companies. So these are all the flexible components wherein an employee can pick which components he wants, and he can also fix the amount how much he wants for these particular components which are categorized as flexible. So please remember, he cannot change the fixed component basic, which is already fixed by the employer. Only he can change the amount for these allowances or reimbursements which are mentioned as flexible. So when you talk about conveyance, for example, it is 0 to 1600. He can structure his conveyance anywhere from 0 to 1600. So for example, in this situation, he may opt for 500 rupees if he feels that is what he wants. But please remember that conveyance does not have any income tax benefit for this financial year. Similarly, house rent allowance, it is maximum 40% of basic and DA, and usually this component is opted at the rate of 40% itself, and it will not be further reduced, and there is no scope for increasing because maximum 40% of basic and DA is exempt as per the IT rules for non-metro cities, and for metro cities it will be 50%. Talking about the third one, that is the consolidated pay or gross pay. Here there is no scientific method or structure used, just a consolidated payment is given, or without any logic of the CTC or the structuring, components are done and the payment is given. So this is usually done by the accounting department, and we don't need to study much about this. So we will be studying more on the fixed CTC structure and flexible CTC structure in this course.